Oh, Donald Trump won the 2024 presidential election, and not just by the Electoral College votes, but surprisingly also by the popular vote. And that is important to note, right? Because he ran in 2016 and won, and he ran in 2020 and lost. But on both occasions, he lost the popular vote. In both occasions, the majority of Americans, at least electorally, were anti-Trump. And now this new election reveals America's biggest issue. And I'm sure many of you are going to say racism, misogyny, misogynoir, but identity politics. And in many respects, you would be right. What's understood don't need to be explained. Although we can. We definitely can. But I want to start with something that I haven't seen talked about enough today. And I want to end with something I haven't seen expressed enough today. And that is with a solutions-based approach, with hope, right? It is appropriate, it is natural to grieve today. And I'm not trying to take you away from that. In addition to your human response, which may be grief, I want to also provide space for hope, for solutions. We down, but we not out. And even if I got to drag America by her lakefront, I'm not going back. Hey, girl, homeboy, and homies. Welcome or welcome back to my corner of the internet. Listen, like I said, I wanted to start with something a little bit less talked about, and that is that Americans are not very educated, not very smart, or at least not politically astute. In the context of politics, Americans are particularly illiterate. And let me cook, because I'm going somewhere. A survey conducted in 2016 found that only 26% of Americans actually can name the 3 branches of American government. Only 9 out of the 50 states and DC require U.S. civics or U.S. government to be taught in schools. And just looking at American education from a more macro perspective, only about 37% of the American population has a bachelor's degree or higher. Now, the reason why I bring all that up is because the number one issue in this election was something that seems really simple on the surface, but is actually a really complex issue: economics. Money. Okay, what's going on in my wallet? It was the number one concern of pretty much every voting bloc in America, right? According to financial publisher Bankrate, 41% of Americans say that the economy was their number one issue, followed by immigration. They made up about 60% of the issues that Americans found most important. And then everything else came after: foreign policy, healthcare, abortion, etc., etc. In the words of Carvel, it's the economy, stupid. But I wonder how many Americans actually understand the American economy. Stupid. Now, I cannot continue in good conscience without saying that her being a black woman absolutely played a role or colored the way that people thought that she was going to be able to address their economic concerns in the kind of aggressive manner that I think that they wanted her to address them. And beyond just economics, racism and misogynoir certainly played a role in people's belief that she had the capacity to lead on any front. I know for a fact that there were millions of Americans who received the message that I did, right? The same messages that said hundreds of leading economists are saying that Harris's plan for the economy is leagues better than Trump's plan for the economy that is not going to benefit average Americans, that will benefit the top 1% and create a budget deficit. Yeah, but many of those folks just didn't want a woman in office, and certainly not a nasty negress leading the most powerful country in the world. And so they voted against their own interest. Yes, I'm looking at you, white women, Latino men, and poor folk. Sister, come in, let's talk. No room for judgment here. But we also have to be honest about the fact that incumbency was whooping Kamala's ass. All the polling that we're looking at, whether you were looking at Siena College, whether you were looking at Reuters, whatever you were looking at, all of it was saying that the vast majority of Americans were unhappy with the current or incumbent administration. This wasn't feeling Biden. And so therefore, they weren't feeling Harris. And every single time that they got an opportunity to remind us that actually you're in the office right now, why don't you make America better right now? You're in the office right now. Why don't you create your economic or your opportunity economy right now? Because you can't, right? It was like swallowing a bowling ball every single time. Because again, most Americans can't even name the 3 branches of government. Nevertheless, understand the role and the function of the vice president, right? A lot of people don't know that the vice president is really just there to cast tie-breaking votes and really look pretty. I mean, that's sit there and look cute, sister. Of course, they are advisors to the president and can be assigned tasks and policy portfolios, like Kamala was assigned immigration. But really, the function is kind of to just stand by and advise the president, and if need be, stand in the place of the president, and obviously to certify the electoral college votes. But historically, they don't do much in the way of affecting actual change. So those questions of why don't you just do it now? Why don't you just change America for the better now? Were rhetorical. right? And those folks who were posing those questions were politically astute enough to know the function of the vice president is not all that, sister. But they were playing to their base of largely blue-collar, working-class, non-college educated folks, white men in particular. And they were banking on them not knowing that. Not knowing that the crisis at the border has really been an issue since, 1994, when the Border Patrol was established. 100 years of various different presidents not being able to adequately solve the issue in a way that makes all Americans feel comfortable. It was an impossible task that she was assigned by Biden. And I'm not blaming people for not understanding civics adequately. Trust me, okay? It is very complex, and the right did their big one when they got civics out of schools, right? So you didn't even adequately learn it when you were supposed to. And also, I myself am learning every single day. I'm learning more and more, and I am in a constant state of practice. I am a forever student. I'm just noting that if folks don't understand how the U.S. government works, they certainly don't understand the functionality and the complexity of the American economy. Understandably so, that is really difficult. I always express this same sentiment that Americans passively engage with politics, girl. Every 4 years, they go on and cast their vote. They may vote every 2 years, but the buck stops at electoral politics and folks just move on. So it makes sense to me when folks say that they think back to a time under Trump when groceries were affordable and gas prices were decent. And then when they think back to the current administration of Joe Biden and they're saying, oh, inflation reached an all-time high of 9%, an inflation rate we haven't seen since the 80s. It's been 40 years since we've seen inflation rates this high. And obviously we know that inflation is not a reflection entirely of Biden's plans or even entirely of Trump's economic policy. We know that has a lot to do with the pandemic, right? But folks don't really blame Trump for the pandemic because they got a signed stimulus check from Trump. Donald Trump, girl. While you girls are casting your votes for Kamala, I'll be at the bank cashing my check. Donald Trump check. That's what the girls felt like when they was going to cast their ballot, girl. And to be fair, a dozen white eggs under this administration went from $2 to $3 to at $1.6 to $9. Now, wait a minute. You've gone way too far. I'm trying to make an omelet. It shouldn't cost me $11. It shouldn't cost me $9 to make an omelet in-house with just salt and pepper. So Americans chose nostalgia over nuance. Fair, but Molly, you in danger, girl. Particularly black folks, brown folks, women, you in danger, girl. And it's particularly disappointing because he did overperform with poor folks. And I find that so interesting because 10 out of the 11 recessions since the 50s have been 10 out of the 11 have all been under Republican administrations. The GDP is at an average growth of an average annual growth of 4.3% under Democrats and 2.5% under Republicans. And in particular, families at the bottom 20% of income distribution experience a 188% income growth under Democratic administrations. But eggs were cheaper under Trump. And listen, I could spend the rest of this video lecturing you on the fact that Trump didn't do anything during his term except what Republicans always do, which is inherit a good economy from a Democrat, in this case, Barack Obama, F it up and take credit for a lot of the economic growth that was due to, in large part, the Obama administration. I could do that. We could talk about how you mishandled the pandemic. And as a result of that, we saw ripple effects in the Biden administration. But it doesn't really matter at this juncture because he is the president. And not just the president that we had, but the president that America chose. So what now? Now, we play the long game, sister. And Republicans have been playing the long game for quite some time, right? They've wanted to overturn Roe v. Wade since Roe v. Wade became Roe v. Wade, right? And so they've gotten on the ground with grassroots organizations and coalitions, and they've been able to mobilize and adopt language that is really democratic language, right? Because it's really democratic policies. Democratic policies are always statistically very popular with the American people, right? That pro-worker, pro-proletariat policy, those are democratic policies. Those are not Republican policies, but they mimic the posturing of Democrats while working in silos and in secret to get their policies enacted, to, put different folks on the Supreme Court and to really fight to get all forms of government, to get all branches of government, rather. So it is imperative that progressives do the same. One election is not the end all be all. It's imperative that we find ways to highlight the misgivings and the policy lies and policy promises, these false promises from Republicans. But additionally, I feel reason to celebrate because the resistance has already begun. More than 100 progressive groups and grassroots organizations like Working Families Party, Move On, Indivisible, and so many more are meeting and plan to continue to meet to build community and affect change on the state and even the city level. We kind of are relying on Republicans being who they say they are and standing on their core tenet of states' rights, right? And so that we can affect change that way. And those meetings, scheduled with over 100 different progressive groups, encourages me. The fact that the Equal Rights Amendment was passed in New York encourages me. And if you're not familiar with the Equal Rights Amendment or Proposition 1, I have it listed right here. The Equal Rights Amendment prohibits discrimination on the basis of ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, reproductive health care, and autonomy. They ate that. And that is now enshrined in the New York Constitution. And as of 2024, 23 states have adopted state constitutions or constitutional amendments that prohibit the denial of equal rights on the basis of sex. There are other states that are working on different forms of legislation that protect folks on the basis of race and identity, the things that we feel are going to be under attack. We have been putting them in place. We have been putting in place provisions on the state and local level so that we can navigate the next 4 years or the next 2 years the most effectively, so that we can fight back. Because if you are Black, brown, queer, you know we have always had to fight for our vote. And like I said at the top of this video, if I have to drag America by her lace front and she has to drag me by mine, we're not going back. We're not. So I encourage you, folks who are angry, folks who are sad, folks who are grieving, to mobilize that knowing that we can fight, to mobilize that anger, to mobilize that frustration, and to get out and grassroots campaign. I also want to say that we can't just throw money at things. I've seen a lot of talk about mutual aid, and money is not a panacea. Right? Money is not a panacea. It is not a one size fits all. It's not a solution for everything. Now, money is not a panacea, but mutual aid is necessary because we do need folks with the most resources and access to donate, right? If certain forms of healthcare and protections are going to be rolled back, we do need the coin. But yeah, I just want to encourage y'all to find community where you can, because there is power in numbers. There's power in the numbers to pressure your local, your mayor, your governor, your senator, your representatives. There's power in pressuring those people. Yeah, that's all I've got today. I still this is day one, so I'm going to be continually trying to find ways to come back with a solution-based approach. If you feel defeated today, girl, have the pizza, have a glass of wine, and get back in the game when you feel like you can. But I'm not giving up on us. I hope you're not giving up on us. And yeah, that's all I've got. I love you. But before I let you go, you know I will never leave you without saying this. I am in a constant state of practice, and so are you. You can never fail when you're in a constant state of practice. I love you. Okay. If you want more videos like this, I'm probably going to do a more extended live later this week over on Patreon. So if you want, support that by clicking the link in the description box down below. I have a Substack coming where it'll be more for my political ideas and things. So if you guys wanted to join that, that link will be in the description box down below when I get that girl up and running. I love you, and I'm out. Bye, world.